Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Cafe Bagheri. So there are two Persian stews, Khoreshes as we call them, that are most popular and important. The first one, Gheymeh, we did a video on a few weeks back, and now it's time for Ghormeh Sabzi. I call this Khoresh the green goddess of Persian stews, and as I said, it's very popular, very aromatic, and another one of my personal favorites. The main ingredient for this Khoresh that gives it its characteristic aroma and very pungent is this guy. It's some called Fenugreek or Shambelile, as Persians call it. It's very rare to find fresh in the U.S., only in Persian and Middle Eastern markets, and it's mainly sourced from California, where a large population of Iranian expats live. Okay, so I'm in this section looking for my kidney beans, red kidney beans for my Ghormeh Sabzi. Now, my sister swears by pinto beans for Ghormeh Sabzi and says they make it so much better. But I personally have always used these red kidney beans in the can. So while I was at the market picking up fresh herbs and kidney beans, also picked up some of these Ammani limes. These are very important in Persian cooking, and some Central Asian and Turkish cooking use these as well. They're basically little limes that have been sun-dried, and then you punch some holes in them, or you grind them for some tart acid, but it just gives a depth of flavor and darkens whatever you're cooking. They're awesome. So Ghormeh Sabzi is going to get, the recipe I give is going to get about 3 to 5 of these, okay? Let me show you the meat that I selected for this Ghormeh Sabzi stew. You can use lamb or beef, or a combination of beef and lamb. So because this is going to have low and slow, we're going to simmer this Khoresh for 2+ hours. You don't have to buy expensive cuts of meat. You just need to have some fat in it. Always make sure your knife is sharp. It makes your work easier, and it's safer. You're not going to cut yourself, and you're not going to have any accidents. So sharp knives are always recommended. The recipe calls for a pound of meat, but believe it or not, I like a lot more meat in my Ghormeh Sabzi and all Persian stews. I like to put closer to 2 pounds of meat. So this is 1.6 pounds of meat. So what I need is little cubes or chunks of meat about this size. Check this out. This is the ideal size of the chunks of meat for this Khoresh and any Persian Khoresh that you're going to make, really. But if you like to really have it more pronounced, you can make bigger pieces like that. See, that's the distinction. Because they're going to, as you simmer these, they're going to reduce in size. Depends on how much you want the meat to show in the Khoresh. It's just a presentation thing, as well as the flavor. You know, how much meat do you want to be present in each bite. So this skirt steak, I'm going to just cut it in strips like this, right? So I'm going to turn around and slice into chunks like this. And like I said, the fat is good. It's going to render. So that's our meat. Again, it's about 1.5+ pounds of skirt steak. I have my kidney beans ready. I have already chopped up my onions. These are brunoise, as the chefs call them, very finely diced onions. If I'm not mistaken, that's about 200 grams. So we're going to put 2 to 3 tablespoons of neutral vegetable oil. You don't want olive oil, because olive oil carries a flavor that you don't want in your stew. It's shimmering now, which means it's on medium high. It's hot enough. And we're going to add our finely chopped onion. This is about a small to medium size onion, by the way. I am going to let this onion to kind of become translucent and it'll start taking a little bit of color. You don't want to fry them too deeply. Just make sure they get a little bit of light golden color. Then we're going to add the meat, okay? So let me check. Well, I'm checking my notes. Why? Because I haven't really cooked Ghormeh Sabzi for over a year and a half due to pandemic. I don't know why, I just haven't. But before that, I had cooked it 4 or 5 times. So trying to relearn the recipe for this video, of course, I went back to my just reference. This is The Art of Cooking, Honar Ashpazi, by the lady named Roza Montazemy. She passed away in 2009. She put this book out in 1960s, I believe, 65, 66, something like that, in Iran. And she's credited to be the first person who wrote down a lot of our traditional recipes. There were notes and pamphlets and little books here and there, but she kind of put together this book. She tells you the idea of what the traditional recipe for a stew or a dish is supposed to have in it, but look at this. She really is not putting the amounts like we're used to in modern recipes. She says as needed, or based on your taste, or enough. I'm really not looking at her recipe for the amounts. I need an idea of the main components, right, to form that dish. And then techniques you have to know. But this is an invaluable reference book for Persian cooking. And I know it's in the 41st edition. So it's been printed and reprinted and reprinted. There are translations of this in English. It's The Art of Cooking by Roza Montazemy. Okay, and I'm sure it's available on Amazon. All right, our onions are barely getting golden. See, this is what I meant. You don't want them to be too dark. Been cooked down to that color. Now I'm going to add all the meat that I cut. And then I'm going to put the turmeric and the black peppers. Always fresh ground. Now, what you're going to do is, still on medium-high, we're going to cook this meat, continue cooking until all the pieces of meat have changed color, and the liquid that is starting to settle in the bottom is going to have to all evaporate, most of it, right? But every piece of meat that's here should change color. See how that's still red? And then about once a minute, you're going to be stirring this, right? Like this. Grab one of the handles and go like this. See, that resettles everything. Make sure that all the pieces of meat are evenly settled and are meeting the heat at the bottom, right? So every time you stir, do a shake. So we cook this meat and onion down for about 11 to 12 minutes. As you can see, there's a little liquid left, but we don't want to take it to where it's completely dry, right? And all the pieces of meat on all sides have changed color. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put 1 liter of boiling hot water in our stew. Look at that, boiling hot, as you can see. So we go 2 of these, that's 1 liter. All right, so now we're going to stir this. And the only other thing that we're going to put in this thing for this stage of our operation is some good old Persian saffron solution. This is nothing but saffron threads ground up and infused or soaked in hot water. A couple of tablespoons should be enough for what we're doing. Again, this is going to be a dark green stew, so you're not going to benefit from the color, the golden color of saffron. We're doing this only for flavor. Okay? There you go. So we're going to stir that. Got all of that in there. We bring it to a boil briefly, and then we're going to knock it down to simmer for a whole hour. While we are simmering for an hour, we're going to go back to our fresh herbs. or if you have dry herbs, I'll talk about that in a moment. And we're going to saute our herbs and be ready for the next phase. A lot of moms and cooks in Iran, they buy a whole bunch of herbs in the right ratio for Ghormeh Sabzi or for different dishes. Chop it up fine, or have the market chop it up real fine, bring it home, saute it, and then pack and then put it in baggies and freeze it for the season. I wanted to do everything fresh. Leeks, and then parsley and cilantro. Fenugreek is the one that you will smell the most prominent in this dish, and that's 50 grams only. Also spinach, 50 grams. I'm going to chop them real fine, mix them all in this bowl, and then I'm going to saute them. There we go. Or you could get dried herbs. There's a couple of companies in California that are the only game in town. Sadaf has packets of dry herbs pre-mixed in right ratios for all of Persian recipes that you may run across. What you do is you re-soak them in a bowl, let it sit for about 15 minutes, then squeeze all the liquid out of it, and then saute the moist, rehydrated herbs, and then proceed per recipe. So this was the last of our leeks being chopped up very fine. Brou noir, as we call it in the kitchen. So we give it a toss to make sure all the different kinds of herbs are mixed. Then we're going to saute this in vegetable oil. The longer you saute your vegetables, the darker the color gets, and a darker green your Ghormeh Sabzi is going to be. So we're going on medium heat. We're going to start with about 3 or 4 tablespoons of oil. Of course, the herbs are going to absorb oil as you cook each batch, and you're going to have to add more oil. Don't overcrowd your pan. As each batch gets sauteed, you transfer them to your bowl and add some more uncooked herbs. I'm going to cut in 4 installments and fry them, right? Did you see that? Our oil is hot and ready to go. I would think that about 4 or 5 cycles of minute and a half of cooking and stirring should get the herbs cooked and darkened to the stage that we want. Let's find out. Like I said, I haven't done this for a year and a half, 2 years, and I believe the last time or last 2 times that I did this, I used dried herbs. By the way, while we're on the herbs, different regions of Iran add a couple of things that are not in the traditional recipe I'm giving you. For example, people in the northwest close to Turkey in Azerbaijan province, they add tarragon. And also another thing that I've seen people add in some parts, a little bit of mint gives this thing, apparently, I've never done it, but apparently it's a good addition to Ghormeh Sabzi. So remember tarragon and mint, and like every other recipe that we look at, make it your own. All right, our last batch of herbs are sautéing. Look at this. See? So we are ready to add this to our batch. Right here. I will show you in a second what you're looking for there. Our meat and onion stew has been simmering for an hour. Now we're going to add our sautéed herbs. Now we're going to give this a stir. We are going to add about 5 of these dried limes that I told you about. We're going to puncture them so that the broth can penetrate and get all the acidic goodness out of it. See, on both sides, see, you could cut it in half and put it in there, but that will expose the inside of lime, and those seeds, they can be bitter, and people don't like that. So try this. If you like less lime, you can do that as well. Now, here's the last couple of things. The salt that we put in, I'm putting a teaspoon of salt automatically. Then at the end of the second hour, before we wrap this up and serve it, we're gonna do a check and adjust for salt and pepper. So the salt goes in. I'm going to put in the juice of a fresh lime right here. Now here's the surprise ingredient. I use just a pinch of cayenne pepper. You can use Aleppo pepper, felfel halab, Iranians call it, or any kind of red chili, medium to hot level. See, this is nothing, hardly at all anything, but it will just give your stew a little bit of just a hint of heat in the back of your throat that improves any stew or soup for that matter. Here we are. We're ready to go for the final stretch. We're going to cover this, except we need some more liquid. See how it's already gone down? We put another half a liter of boiling water. There you go. So we've got our herbs and our limes, lime juice, and a little bit of kick. We're gonna add our kidney beans. Now these are out of a can again. Just dump the broth that came with the beans in the can. Now we're ready to go for our second hour of simmer right here. We'll be back and finish this up. So our second 1 hour simmer on this stew is done. We're gonna check it. As you can see, I'm already cooking my Persian rice to go with the Khoresh. Ooh, look at this. This is after 2 hours. And adjust the salt and pepper one last time, or maybe if it needs more acid, or sometimes I add some more lime juice. It needs a little salt. Ooh, I can taste that little zing of the hot pepper that I put in there, just a little pinch. There you go. I'm gonna put about a quarter to half more teaspoon, about a half teaspoon. And we're gonna stir it thoroughly. And we're going to let this simmer another 10 minutes, just in time for our imaginary guests to arrive and for our rice to be ready. Also, one more important thing is you can make this today and eat it tomorrow, and it's 5 times better tomorrow, and it's 10 times better 3 days from now. So it helps your arrangements for a party, so you don't have to rush on the day of. I recommend making all Persian stews the day or 2 days ahead of time for optimum flavor and taste, but also for convenience. So let's give this guy 10 more minutes, then I'll see you on the other side. All right, here's our Ghormeh Sabzi. Check this out. So we had 2 hours of simmering plus a 10-minute simmer that ended up being longer. You notice the lid is off of this pot. Why? Because when I finished the last 10 minutes, I noticed there was still a little more liquid than I wanted, and this dark green oily film on the top wasn't formed. That's a sign that your Khoresh has settled and is optimum in flavor. They call it in Persian ja uftade, meaning it has settled, right? So I let it go another 15 minutes. So in actuality, it was 2 hours and 25 minutes. The last part was with the lid off, so we get more moisture evaporated and this settles down. So now we've got our Persian saffron rice. By the way, we have a nice video and recipe on YouTube for that rice recipe. I'm gonna serve this. Now, people sometimes don't like these dried limes. I love them. They have a bitter taste in the skin, and you could just press it to get all the goodness and sour juice out of it. Okay, so I think this Ghormeh Sabzi recipe is gonna be something you wanna try at home. Send me pictures on Instagram at Cafe Bagheri. Go ahead and like this video if you like this experience. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do it right now and hit that little bell button so we can keep in touch. There is a lot more delicious stuff coming right here at Cafe Bagheri, and I'd like to see you soon, very soon. Oh my God, I can't wait to have this.